So we're not on the big TV.
The call to order the school committee meeting for Tuesday, December 17th. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Thank you all for staying or coming out on this snowy evening. As you know, school was canceled, or not canceled, school was afternoon
activities.
Thank you. I do not need to start any rumors. And
School tomorrow.
thank you, we heard it here. But we do have several people who are our superintendent and others who come from a distance, and we decided to hold this meeting tonight because we essentially have just this evening to vote and polled the committee and had only one other potential for making quorum before the end of the year, given school vacations and people's lack of availability. So appreciate that you all were able to make it tonight. Dr. Brown is not able to make it. She is in fact stuck in Boston and will not make it in time. So in light of trying to get people out of here safely and expeditiously, I had mentioned to the media, and I'm not sure what was published or not, that this will be an abbreviated meeting, that the agenda tonight will include just the budget and the articles and the discussions pertinent to those, and the votes that need to be taken, so that we can get our employees home and ourselves home. So,
Joyce?
yes, sir.
Recognizing we have some visitors, I think we should give them an opportunity to speak if they so wish.
Like I said, I had made it
Was there-
public earlier today that this would be an abbreviated meeting. I do not know if that information got out.
Well, yeah, it doesn't matter. It's on the agenda. We had this meeting. We had an opportunity to reschedule it. You chose not to, and
I'm sorry.
I don't know if anybody wants to. Anybody wants to comment?
Yeah, I will. My name's Sean Carr. I'm in precinct.
Yeah, please go.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry,
Can we? No?
Wait, just.
Wait, let's
It has to be
discuss this.
recognized by the chair, that's the only thing.
like I said, I appreciate that. I'm not quite sure I agree with the fact that I made this opportunity. We are in fact scheduled, or will schedule a Friday if this meeting wasn't going to happen, and that was our only other opportunity. We could do this for 15 more minutes and delay the proceedings of the meeting.
I don't see any harm in doing that. We came all this way. Then the gentleman wants to speak. Why not?
I will. I
let
tell
him
you what.
speak?
I will. The sign-up sheet wasn't out. I will indulge you to the point that I need to know what it is the topic is before you come on camera, because in fact we do have
Sure. Well,
rules.
the topic is frankly, more and more parents are very concerned.
Yeah, come on.
No, I want to hear what the topic is before he's on camera, so I can determine.
Understand that there are increasing levels of concern among the parents of this school system
Okay.
that want to pay much more attention of what is happening with our school board, with our school committee, and with our teachers association. So at public meeting, there will be a lot more parents that are becoming more active and vocal to try to see what is going on, so we have a better understanding of exactly what the situation is and why there seems to be quite a bit of friction between various groups and having a smooth functioning school for our children. That's why we're here.
I will indulge you to state that now on camera and to be, but you understand that what you're saying to us is not what's being broadcast to the public, and that you can say a lot to us, but that just so that it gives us the opportunity to reply to that.
So here?
Yes.
Okay.
And identify yourself.
Which precinct?
4. Hi, my name is Sean Carr. I'm from Precinct 4. I'm a parent of 2 children in the Stoughton school system. I'm also a town meeting rep, and there's increasing numbers of parents in the town that are very interested and concerned with the current state of our school committee and our teachers association and the communications and the developments therein. And there will be more of us here as meetings go on to learn more, because frankly, we don't have a great understanding of what's going on. There seems to be a lot of finger pointing, and it has us all concerned with what's going on, and we want to pay more attention and see and learn more.
Sure.
So that's why you'll see more of us here before we start taking any positions of what we think needs to happen.
Great. Then allow me to hopefully this will answer your concerns or your questions. There has been a lot of back and forth, which is, I think, quite honestly, a little unfortunate. Bargaining is a very prescribed process. It involves each side picking a bargaining team and those teams going to the table in essentially executive session to execute a contract. A contract includes certainly salary compensation, but it includes a great deal more than that as well. The ground rules this year are different than past years in that we don't necessarily have gag orders in what we can talk about, but I do, as a member of the bargaining team, respect the process and what needs to play out in a bargaining session. Like I said, there's a lot more on the table than just salaries. Given what's happening in education, not only nationwide, but particularly in the state in terms of the mandates that are down, teacher evaluation, state mandated testing, the data reporting, there's a lot to the teaching profession. Again, a great deal of respect for what these teachers must do, not only in teaching, but what the state is putting on them as well. And a lot of that is the basis for what bargaining is about. It's not just about they don't like what we're offering for salary, we don't like what they're offering for salary. Unfortunately, each side gets to represent what they want to the public in order to buy favor and support. I don't really care for that game. I would really rather bargaining happened at the bargaining table. I appreciate people's concerns about it. Rest assured that every one of us here wants what is best for the teachers. We all want to see, and I think we've said it many, many times, teachers in Stoughton paid really on the higher side of average. We do want to attract and retain. We do want our senior teachers to feel that they can get the best deal going into retirement, and we feel that the offer we have on the table is doing that, but there are so many more issues, and anybody who expects to have a contract settled by the next session that we meet, which by the way is January 27th, it's not realistic with what else has to happen in terms of bargaining. And we look forward to it continuing.
Well, we're certainly not here
Yeah.
as proxies for the teachers
No.
in any way, shape, or form. We're here to get an education,
And
to learn how this process, what's happening,
Yes.
and to be more involved and better consumers of the services we use.
And I do appreciate that, and I really would like to look for ways to engage parents in the process where they can be engaged. Like I said, bargaining is its own thing, and it really needs to happen the way it can. I'm certainly open to suggestions, and know that you all have, again, our emails and access to the superintendent and others to help us help you get the answers that you want. So I appreciate it if that's.
Joyce? I just wanted to mention that I think we all appreciate the spirit of learning more about how the school system works, how the administration works, and you're right, because that's 2/3 of your tax dollars essentially go to the school system.
Okay.
You have two avenues.
I'm sorry, this is.
I'm just
understand,
providing
but
some
this is public
background
comment.
information. The one source of avenue you have for learning is the school committee meeting minutes, which are posted on the school webpage. And also, like a time machine going back, you have access to, on demand, all the school committee meeting videos.
Indeed.
So I think that would be a great education, just going back maybe a few meetings, maybe even more, to be able to capture what's been happening.
And please take a look at the website. We've currently put up a whole process, a flow chart, if you will, that discusses the entire process in terms of state mandates and what we need to do in terms of improvement planning, and then the data and the action plans that come from that. That really is what drives what our budget decisions are about, and in many ways also what our teacher contracts are about in terms of defining what those mandates are and where we're headed. So thank you. Okay, now I would like to go to, I think we decided to start with articles.
We did, which means that Joel will have less time that he has to wait.
Yes.
I thought you were the plow guy, Joel.
We want him to get out and plow then.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So I've presented you with two articles. They're articles, once again, for accelerated repair projects. They're both at the Gibbons School. One is for the Gibbons roof, one is for the Gibbons window. These articles have not been presented to the Facilities Committee. They will be tomorrow night.
And just so I might add, these are 2 articles in addition to the other 3 that we're still going to vote on tonight.
These are in addition to the other articles that will be voted tonight.
Yes.
The other articles that were presented, the 3 articles that were presented previously are additional funding for the existing projects that are
Correct.
in the pipeline.
And these are brand-new projects that we never presented to town meeting before.
These have never been presented to town meeting. These have not been, these do not have SOIs submitted for them. This is the very preliminary.
This is a chance for us to have the discussion on them.
Correct.
Yeah. Would you like to elaborate on where this falls within the plans from the facility master plan?
From the facility master plan, as you know, we did a roof study and a windows study. This is the last roof to be done as part of the roofing study, with the exception of the south and the high school, who have SOIs submitted for replacement of those buildings. So at this point, we are not considering them for major projects. The Gibbons windows is number 3 under the windows study. Was suggested to be number 3, and that's where we're putting it in.
Is there any reason or advantage to bundling both at the same building in the same year? Is there
No, they
anything?
just happen to fall that way.
Okay.
The roof at the Gibbons was, as I said, basically the last one to be done on the roof study. The windows happen to fall. The windows, it's kind of a toss-up between the DAW and the Gibbons. The DAW, for some reason, fell one place higher,
Okay.
and the Gibbons would have fallen this year.
Now, the numbers that you see are significantly higher than what the studies state. Mr. Harding, I believe, I won't put words in your mouth. You can elaborate on what these numbers come from.
Basically, they've come from our experience with MSBA to date, between the costs of doing business with MSBA regarding having an OPM on the project, as well as, how should I say this, an untested architect, unchosen architect, an architect that we didn't choose, that was appointed for
MSBA
us.
chose it for us?
Yes.
Correct. So, as mentioned on the 3 previous articles that we're now having to request additional funds for, we boosted the estimated value of these 2 articles up considerably. So hopefully we will not have to go back to town meeting a second time.
So Joel, how did you arrive at this number? Was there a percentage from what the original estimate was?
They were percentages. They're based on the percentages of increase over the original studies on the 3 projects we were in the process of. The windows is approximately a 40% increase, and the roof is approximately a 70% increase.
Wow.
With that said, we are not through the process of figuring out why the cost of doing business with the MSBA is coming in so much higher.
No.
We are not certain that it would, in fact, be a 70% increase.
No. In fact, as you know, we've have knocked down the price of the other 3 projects considerably, especially on the 2 window projects. They made a lot of assumptions on the window projects that were proven to be incorrect, and had put in pricing for certain items that we ended up determining we didn't need. The one issue that still is outstanding is the price that they presented to us for the roof at the west. We cannot determine why their price is so high on that. We have now taken basically the cost estimate, taking the numbers out of it, and provided that to a roofing firm to look at and see where why the price estimate is so high, to see if we can knock that down to some degree.
So, well, and let me just add, goodie for questions. Mr. Harding did a spreadsheet for us recently that showed the costs of the past roof projects as compared to the windows, or to the roof studies amounts, and they all came in under budget, and one was done as recently as last year. So we really don't feel that there's a good basis, and we're waiting to hear back from these contractors to get a better idea. We also don't have a final revised number
No.
from the architect, OPM involved, with the full expectation that by the time we go to town meeting, we will have very different numbers for additional monies.
Yeah.
There will be most likely additional monies, but we're hopefully in the 10 or 15% area instead of in the 40 or 70% area.
Yeah, I mean, for instance, the Hanson School, we went from almost double, in fact, more than double, almost 80% increase, and now we're down to like $36,000
Yeah.
Over.
over.
Oh,
So,
So even though these numbers that the Gibbons are really high, there's a reason to believe that by the time these would come to town meeting, should we choose to take them to town meeting, and that's a discussion that will happen yet after you have a chance to ask questions, that the numbers will be significantly different. Your question, Mr. Delancey.
Just for everybody's edification, the percentage of reimbursement from the MSBA is 56.4?
Currently, it is 54%. They
54?
They
54.16.
Yeah, they re-look at the formula every year, and so ours has changed to 54.16.
Because that's an important selling point also.
Sure.
So people are aware that it's just not only $1.3 million or whatever, less reimbursement, so
We do have to commit for the entire amount.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think the feeling
Absolutely. Yep.
is just that the numbers are just wacky.
And again, this is based on us submitting SOIs for these two projects, or multiple SOIs would be two SOIs, and them being approved, obviously. I mean, if the SOIs are not approved, then
Do you have any questions, Dr. Earl?
Yes, ma'am.
Please
Thank
go
you.
ahead.
Thank you for asking me.
Well,
Thank you for coming, Joel, Mr. Harding. So you mentioned that this wasn't presented to the town meeting yet, but the architect was hired by the MSBA.
no, that's not what I said.
Who paid for the architect?
That's not what I said.
the architect was
The
hired.
architect was appointed by the MSBA for the three projects we are in process of, that we've been approved. There's been no architect hired for these articles. There's been no SOI submitted for these articles. The architect, once again, that was appointed by the MSBA is for the three accelerated repair projects we have underway at present that we've been approved by.
So the architect was hired for the other three accelerated repair projects, but he also worked on these?
No.
No.
Oh, so you're just taking the ratio?
Exactly.
Exactly. I'm just taking the ratio that was provided to us by the architect for those three projects, that we're doing window projects and roof projects. So I took the same percentage of increase from those cost estimates and applied it to these articles
I see.
versus the study numbers.
Okay.
So that's
So
all
this
we
is
did.
just like a back of the envelope calculation as opposed to some estimation methodology.
That's just based on the increase that we saw of the projects that we're in progress with.
Okay.
I
And the-
transferred it to these
And the
projects.
estimation methodology, that's the basis of it, which is our roof and our window study, have proven to be very firm in recent history. It's just adding their acceleration to it.
Right.
Because until we've gone through the process with the MSBA, this is really our first foray into dealing with them on accelerated repair and aren't sure what to expect.
Now, the other question I have is, I haven't really looked at the MSBA procedures for the accelerated repair projects, but for new buildings, they were saying, to put the SOI first. Even if it's approved, you still have like a 1 year to get the town meeting approval. It's the same thing.
You can do the same thing with an accelerated repair project. You can submit the SOI, get that approved. Usually, however, with an accelerated repair project, then you have to go back and call for a special town meeting because the time frame is different for a repair project than it is for a replacement project.
How much time would we have?
might have 3 months.
3 months.
There's a deadline, and I don't know the number, but you actually have to have started construction within a certain time period
Yes.
from when you are accepted. And one of the issues that hurts with that is, in terms of windows, the manufacturing schedule could put us behind if we have too big of a time period. It's 12 months or 18 months. It's somewhere.
They were saying 18 months.
Yeah.
Plus the situation with roof, obviously, you don't want to have your roof off in the middle of winter. You want to avoid that as much as possible. So that kind of puts us, because you have to have, there's a certain window for bidding and materials.
So the increase factor you said you used was 40 and 70%?
40% for the windows and 70% for the roof, yes.
So these are worst-case scenarios,
I would
don't know.
hope, yes.
Yeah.
by far, I
Would hope.
assume. Okay.
Mr. Delansky.
Yeah, one last question, Joe. These are original windows on the Gibbons?
Yes.
And the roof is the original roof?
No, the roof is a second roof. There are 2 roofs on the building.
This does, though, bring into question the conversation that I think we now need to have, which is that we have 3 accelerated repair projects in process. They are scheduled, if all goes well, to be next summer, potentially, or this coming summer on the roof.
This coming summer on the roof and the following season, shall we say, for the windows. We're trying to fudge that a little bit.
And with those in play and in process, it is certainly our decision as to whether we table the Gibbons in 2 ways. One, either not to take forward, when we haven't talked about submitting SOIs yet, either just submitting the SOIs and working the process that way and looking for funding after, or even holding the SOIs and holding these projects for another year, which is certainly the prerogative of the board.
Okay. I have a question. So how bad a shape is the roof or the windows at the Gibbons? And what kinds of...
I mean, we could go another year, possibly another 2 years.
Okay.
Patching and repairing. The windows, again, it's not so much the framing as we tried to get across to our architect as it is the glazing. The glazing over the years has been replaced in many places with from glass to plexiglass or Lexan. And so a lot of times that, as you know, is a material that flexes.
Yeah.
So we get sometimes we get water infiltration through the glazing, not through the frame. But again, we could go another year probably or 2 without.
What is the total that we have for our articles, for our extraordinary maintenance articles? Because we got this as extraordinary maintenance, right?
Well, this
Or no?
This is more capital
Capital,
expenditure.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
This would be capital. Yeah.
All right. And have we been working with the capital planning committee on things like this?
Well, I've met with the capital planning committee and gone to several of their meetings.
Okay.
I really haven't heard from them other than they were trying to get together a list of capital items within the town.
Okay.
I haven't seen anything from them recently as far as recommendations
Okay.
to town meeting. This is something that the facilities committee has been working on. We've had discussions about this, but this is where this is coming from.
Joyce?
Yes, Dr. Earl.
When was it, do you remember when was it that we put the SOIs in for the West School roof and Hanson School windows?
Had to be probably January of last year, January or February.
So it took us about a year to get going.
What we got approval for them.
This summer, right?
Yeah.
Was not one of them the year before?
Yeah,
The
I think
windows?
it was.
One, was it the Hanson windows?
No,
No.
we asked for the article the year before. Oops, excuse me, I'm sorry.
I'll get it.
Snow alert?
Now my nephew's birthday is today, and he's calling me. I don't know why he's calling me.
The gift never got there.
Oh, yes, it did. We submitted articles on 2 different years. We submitted an article, the Hanson Windows article, 1 year, and then the
Right.
roof and DAW
Last year.
article second year.
Yeah.
But the SOIs were all submitted at the same time.
What are the chances that, we got the West School, Hanson School windows and Doss School windows?
Correct?
So what are the chances that MSBA will,
I'm sorry.
what are the chances will MSBA will add more accelerated projects on our plate?
I have no idea. I have no idea whether they're allocating projects by school district or just by whoever hits, whoever they choose first.
What we can see from their website is that they certainly are not preferential, but they certainly do favor the fact that we've had these studies done. It makes a compelling case for us to go before them to show that we've had both roof and window studies completed.
Those are the old studies you're talking about? Or
Not
this
all. The window
architect
study is only a year or a year or two old. The roof study is many more, but in fact they do evaluate the condition of all of our buildings and their needs versus a lot of schools which just submit SOIs without that kind of backup.
We've submitted, reams and reams and reams of items to MSBA to prove that we have been maintaining our buildings. The articles that town meeting has provided for us over the years, things like that. So, but I can't say whether they are looking at different towns. Some towns, as you look at MSBA websites, have 3 and 4 buildings being replaced. So I don't know. I can't really answer that question.
Ms. Devaney.
So here are my thoughts. I think that relative to a new building, although these are huge numbers, that this is short money compared to repairing an entire building if we don't get the maintenance done. And ultimately the decision lies at town meeting, but we need to get these done. And we don't want to risk damaging structurally the building by allowing further water infiltration.
Well, I don't think it'll be damaged per se. If we do have an issue with the roof, we go up and we do repair it.
Yeah.
But it becomes a situation where the more you're on the roof, the more damage you do as well. So things like that, and they have reached their life expectancy. At some point, the life expectancy has ended for these products, and you're really wasting your money by patching and repair them. But also, I think it's a very good idea to put these things before town meeting so they're aware that they need to be done. That they know that these items are in the pipeline, that eventually they're going to come forward and have to be done.
Mr. Delinsky.
Madam Chairman, to bring this to a head, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the articles as written to be submitted to town meeting.
Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion?
I would have done it the other way. I think that there is a need to, maintain those things, but we have fudge factors that are coming in the cost that are coming from the other projects, and we think that cost is going to go down. So what I would be tempted to do is to write the SOI, and then also in the meantime hope that the cost estimate factors are going to come down to more realistic values. And then from past experience, it sounds like we are going to have at least 1 year to get funding for the project. So that's what I would do.
Well, I just want to add to that. Do know that as with the other articles that we're going to be talking about, the dollar amount that we approve tonight is for the purpose of this vote, but it will be, in fact, we'll have better numbers before we come to FinCom to finalize
most certainly
these articles.
And we can only go down with the
So even though we're still pending at this point, I would guess that we're probably only weeks away from the architect having to have final numbers on the other 3 projects, the other 2 types of projects.
I would hope so, yes.
The other thing is, if worst comes to worst, we can always withdraw if need be,
Yeah.
but I'd rather have the article
That's true.
push through and get it on
Yeah.
there, so there's no discussion afterwards as to whether we're going to go ahead with the project or not. But let's get it out there.
Yeah.
And then we have the flexibility of lowering the number or withdrawing the article in its entirety.
I'd like to ask the superintendent or Mr. Harding for their recommendation as to how they feel.
Well, I think Joel's done a good job laying out the case. The Facilities Committee has to look at all of the 8 buildings in the system. And the Gibbons is one of our 2 newer buildings. Therefore, it is a building that we are going to have to keep the longest. And if we look at a 15 to 25-year plan of replacing buildings, then that building will be 65 years old when the time comes to be thinking about replacing it. So the way the projects were prioritized is to make sure that the buildings we are going to have to keep the longest will be maintained in the condition that they will not be deteriorated hulks by the time we get to the point where we actually can do a replacement of them. Sometimes we'll go through the entire process. It isn't quite clear when these SOIs will be approved, but it's certainly been helpful with MSBA to see that the town has provided the funding already, because there's a lot of flexibility then. For something that takes a long time, it doesn't add an unnecessary length of time because of the fact that the town isn't ready. And it is, of course, the case that the articles, everything for the budget has to be done early, and there's absolutely no harm in either reducing or lowering or
Withdrawing.
or
Or
just
withdrawing.
withdrawing them entirely. This has to be done for them even to be in play. The decision of whether or not they're going to be in play by town meeting doesn't need to be made yet. So Joel and I have worked on this for a long period of time, as has the Facilities Committee, as have a number of you. And so it's our recommendation that we do put the articles forward, at least at this stage.
And to a certain degree, both the feasibility and the facilities committee understood and voiced the fact that we aren't going to do one project, stop, start another project,
Yeah.
stop, start another project. We're going to keep pushing these items through to the pipeline. They've got to be done. The longer we wait, the more deterioration there's going to be.
Yeah.
The more expensive they're going to be. So.
I also want to take the focus off of the word deterioration, which we say a lot, because quite honestly, one of the big benefits of maintaining your buildings and maintaining your major systems is decreasing the cost of operating the building.
Right.
Because the cost of operating the building over the life cycle of that system is reduced significantly by replacing the system when it's past its life cycle. So the fact that we would be reducing energy costs significantly is probably a bigger benefit of this, as opposed to saying that there's any sort of deterioration with the buildings.
Yeah, I would say aging gracefully as opposed to deterioration.
Exactly, because we all know the Gibbons is really in excellent shape, but
I'm deteriorating.
I'm aging gracefully.
okay. So, is there any more discussion? We have a motion and a second on the table. Are we handling these one at a time?
I think we should.
Okay, so could you clarify your motion, Mr. Dolinsky?
I was for both articles at the same time.
Oh, okay,
to make
then,
it easier.
that's fine.
Okay.
That's
Expedite the
fine.
situation.
Well, then we will vote on
fine.
both articles.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay.
And the reason I oppose is that I believe we certainly should go ahead with the SOIs, but since we don't have a good handle on the numbers, it's premature to submit this.
That is noted. We will now go back to the articles that were in your last packet, which I apologize if you don't have your packets with you. But I will get to the point in those packets so I can read the numbers to you. Warrant articles.
So the numbers have changed?
No, but these are for the other 3 articles, which are,
We already voted for
we
those.
did not vote
No.
for them. We discussed them, but we did not take a vote.
What date was?
That was the last meeting. So those 3 articles were for the windows at the Joseph R. Daw School, for additional monies, and the Daw School was in the amount of $753,000 additional, although on that one we feel we have pretty firm numbers, which is essentially, I'm digging. At the point that we had this meeting, last meeting, it was already down to 350, and as per your notes, and I can dig it out, we're probably talking in the tens of thousands range versus hundreds of thousands range.
Yeah, I would say we're still above 100,000, I
Okay.
think, as I remember,
On the draw.
but we're very close.
But we will in fact be voting on the $753,000 because until we have firm numbers from the architect, we will not commit to changing this number, which will happen before FinCom. So, is there any discussion on the windows at the Daw School in the additional amount of $753,000? Anybody willing to make a motion?
Motion to approve the article, I'm sorry, is this on the Daw School?
Daw School.
On the Daw School windows for an additional $753,000.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
I thought we already voted on it, and I voted no because I remember we have the lengthy discussion because that article was putting the control of the money under the direction of the School Facilities Committee, and I pointed out that it should be School Committee instead of School Facilities Committee.
We had the discussion, we did not have a vote.
Okay, so I will be voting against it for that reason.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
And opposed?
Aye. Did you get the reason, Mary?
Yes. Based on this? No, based on the fact that it was the School Facilities Committee as opposed to, yeah. Then move on to the Hanson article, which is the Hanson windows with the additional amount of $717,000.
Motion to approve the motion to approve the article on the replacement of the existing window assemblies at the Hanson Elementary School for the additional amount of $717,000.
If I may on that one. The architect, for whatever reason, assumed that there was a large amount of hazardous materials at that building and had designed or put forward a preliminary design to essentially take the facade of the building off. He was prepared to take
Several feet of masonry.
several feet of masonry around
I'm
each
sorry, Joel,
opening.
which one?
The Hanson.
The Hanson windows.
Was proposing to take several feet of masonry around each opening out and then replace it. After some investigation, we found that that was not necessary. So the additional costs for that project are going to be considerably lower than the number you have in front of you. But again, we're not prepared to lower that tonight.
And we'll have that final number about when? Before FinCom or before town meeting or?
I'm hoping before FinCom.
Okay, all right, great.
We're still doing some investigation, but we hope to have it before FinCom.
Okay, so this is worst case to complete the project.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
So I have a motion.
Second it.
Okay.
You had a second, right?
I don't recall if I do. Do I have one now?
Yes, sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any discussion, further discussion on the Hanson? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed
For
for
the
the
same
same
reason, yep.
reason.
And the last one is on the West Elementary School roof with the addition of $622,000.
Again, that project in the end will not be anywhere near as high as what we projected. We've gone through and pulled several items out to put them in as alternates in the bid. But it's still, the cost estimate they are providing is still considerably higher than what we think it should be. So there's still some discussion going on about the roof project, but it will be lower than that number that we presented.
And I appreciate the work that the OPM is doing in terms of putting out the estimate to us, for us, to a roofing contractor to get a more realistic feeling. And should have those numbers, I would guess, within the month.
I would hope so, yes.
Yeah. Somebody?
At the previous meeting, we had talked about the possibility of working with the OPM to possibly replace the architect. Has there been anything?
We've had some discussions. The OPM is a little leery about doing that, about asking MSBA to do it at this point. The architect has agreed to some changes, so we're still in negotiations. We're still going to see how things transpire in the next month or so.
I guess
Thank
I
you.
would say rest assured that the OPM is acting in our interest. That is what they are hired to do, and is keeping a very close eye on
Good.
the workings of
Great.
the architect. So
Good. Thank you.
it is in their interest that it not get messed up with the MSBA either.
Yeah.
As well as
no,
ours.
we don't want to do that.
Any motion?
Motion to approve the article on the replacement of the existing roof systems and associated components at West Elementary School in the amount of in the amount of an additional $622,000.
Second?
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We
And both for the
oppose,
same reason,
yes.
correct? Okay.
The reason being, but they are all projects that are needed, so I don't object to that. I just object to the control of the
Understood.
money.
Thank you, Mr. Harding.
You're quite welcome.
Oh, Mr. Harding, before you go, can I ask you a budget question? Budget discussion.
We
will
are going to be
coming up
discussing
soon.
budget next. Is that?
Is that okay?
Well,
Well, you tell us what it is
Simple
pertinent
question.
to.
I noticed in the warrants that we pay like fees to National Grid as well as Direct Energy. So are we buying some reduced cost energy from?
I don't understand the question. We
I look at the warrant articles. We got electricity bills, I think. Or tell me if I'm mistaken. We pay bills to Direct Energy and also for National Grid.
National
It
Grid,
seems like one of them is like the transmission fees, the other one is the energy.
correct.
So how much are we saving with that kind of arrangement?
It varies, depends on the National Grid, number one, will not provide us with electricity, for instance.
They won't?
They will not. All they are is a company that is providing services. In other words, they provide the wires and things like that, but they will not provide us electricity to our buildings. We have to bid that for a separate supplier.
Oh, really? I didn't
So
realize that.
we are in the third year of a 3-year contract. So it depends. It's a commodity. It goes up and down. Our natural gas is also bid. Natural gas
Yeah, I
happens to be
noticed
very
that too.
cheap right now, so that will go down. Electricity, we also expect to go down because many of the plants in New England are natural gas fired. So we do expect our unit cost to go down for both electricity and natural gas over the next contract.
Thank you.
Thanks.
go home now.
If I can get there.
Oh.
Sure I can.
Say hello to your, happy birthday to your
Your
niece.
nephew, yeah.
Nephew.
I will, thank you.
On to budget.
On to budget.
Sorry.
I just wanted to, I met, as I very regularly do, with the town manager this week. And we furthered the discussion that we've been having since the very beginning of this budget cycle, and that is that we're going to attempt something that has not been done before. Don't try this at home. But we're looking to do a, and we're going to have to see how this plays out, if this is going to work for everyone. But it is our plan now to attempt to do a joint executive summary for the entire budget for town meeting. So the style of executive summary that we've been using the last 2 years was one that Mrs. Selveny and I got excited about when we went to MASC 2 years ago, the year you were chair, which has a bit more text and some relevant graphs and things depending on what the questions and issues for the given year are. And it's nicer for people than to just see the numbers, although the budget is actually numbers. But the senior management on the municipal side is interested in participating in that project. So we talked a little bit about how we might structure it, and because of the fact that they're a little behind in their schedule, not behind, or not more behind than they should be, but their schedule is a different timetable from ours. We were only able to talk big picture vision and generalities the other day. So we're working on it, and we'll be able to go ahead with what we've been doing if it turns out that that's in everybody's best interest. But we'd certainly like to take a shot at doing it as an entire community.
I think given the focus on master planning and on community-wide economic development, that it would make a very nice picture to be able to present how the two are interconnected
Yes.
and related. So,
And I just
congratulations.
wanted to add something, that the budget narrative, the purpose of the budget narrative is to explain that the budget is not just about numbers, but it reflects our goals, our values, and our direction, where we've been, where we are, and where we're going. So,
Right, and we can certainly do that as an entire town.
Great. Thank
Great.
you. Where would you like to start the discussion on the budget?
There's been nothing changed since the last time we met last week. So the entire budget proposal, should it be accepted by town meeting, is approximately almost exactly 4% higher than the cost of the operating budget this year. As we've discussed over the weeks that we've been talking about this, the budget is an expression of our values, and our values as expressed in this document are to maintain the things that we have, which we've been doing since 2008 when the economy got very bad, replacing some of the things that have been lost during the recession that we are now seeing in the system, that there's definitely an impact, and some things just simply can't be done without if you expect to have the same level of service. We've been operating on a 3-year plan looking at the needs of education in the 21st century and trying to implement slowly over time some of the things from that plan. We've adopted a 3-year district improvement plan, and many of the things in the budget are direct lifts from that plan and the school improvement plans, and placed in numbers in the budget to make those things in those plans happen. And that's where the entire budget request proposal has come from. And that's what you've seen, and that's what we've been having the conversations about. And I've had really good conversations with folks who've been interested in coming in and talking about it, which is something that I really enjoy doing, and I'd be happy to talk to anybody who wants to come in and talk about it. Over the years, I've entertained finance committee members, town meeting members, parents, former school committee people, people who are graduate students with interests in economics and all. So those conversations I find are really fruitful, and the proposal as you see it has been developed through a long process, which has included you, which has included our administrators, which has included our parents through school councils, which has included all of our administrators, and everyone, including the state, who helped us through the district review in refining our planning process. Oh, and there's the state mandates, and they're all in there too, which maybe are not as exciting in some ways, but some of the things that we're seeing with the new curriculum frameworks are in fact very exciting. And some of the things like the evaluation tool and the retraining of teachers for students who do not speak English as a primary language, and some of those things are also included. And so there's a lot going on all at once right now. Some of the things that are coming from external pressures and expectations, and then some of them are coming from our own internal expectations as well.
I'll open the discussion for questions.
I have some questions.
Ms. Sauvanet?
Just some specific questions is, I was just looking at the raise for the curriculum coordinators, both STEM and humanities.
Would you like to reference a page for
I'm
us?
sorry, it's page
I think you're looking at 2 and
2.
3.
Okay.
Exactly right. And I was just wondering, those are both sizable raises, and I was, compared to some of the other administrators, so.
The curriculum coordinator positions are
yeah.
administrator positions, but they are in our Unit B. So they are part of the STA, and unlike administrators with whom I have a conversation about compensation. The raises are contractual obligations. There are steps in those contracts.
Okay. And then under, I think it's page 3, it's 099 step class change. The amount of money that's budgeted is for lane changes. Is that what that is? Where it says.
Correct.
Okay. All right. And then the other thing.
And if I could just
Yeah, go ahead.
elaborate on that
Yeah,
for just
yeah.
1 second. I think it's kind of sad that I know the page that everything is on here, but I guess I should if anybody should.
Yeah.
That isn't really a guess. It's based on 2 things. One is the amount that we have paid over the last 5 years. We look at a 5-year trend, but the teachers have an obligation to tell us by November 1st if they're going to be getting a change. And if we have a letter from them saying that they are going to be getting one, we must budget for it.
And just for explanation's sake, this is, a lane change is a change in degree
Based
or
on
number of
additional
credits. Yeah.
education,
Right.
either a new degree or additional credits up towards a new
With
degree.
the criteria, okay.
So the other thing, and I guess this is a question for both of you, is it possible to quantify the amount of money unfunded federal and state mandates cost us, especially to do it prior to town meeting? Because I think it's really interesting for people to understand how much we're required to do that we have no money for. For instance, I didn't see any money in here to pay for the park assessments that are the tests are going to replace MCAS, that we have been selected as a pilot district for the spring. And do we have any idea how much those will cost?
Well, we can certainly take a shot at that.
Okay.
And that's a really interesting exercise, and it's different for every district.
Yeah.
Because we did get $248,000 from Race to the Top. And so that would be partial funding for some of the mandates. So we've been able to use that money for curriculum development and for development of assessments. And there are things related to the mandates we've been able to use that for. Some districts don't get that. There is something of a controversy. The state auditor has made rulings on certain things and called them unfunded mandates. Having done that, that doesn't necessarily mean that the legislature has followed by sending money for them. So we can certainly make an attempt at that and look at what offsets, or if we have an unfunded mandate, where you might find it in the budget.
Because there was maybe it was last spring, there was a district that had done that and sent it on the MASC listserv, and it was really interesting.
It was New Bedford or Taunton, one of the two.
Taunton.
Yeah.
It was Taunton. Yes, it was Taunton. So I think that would be good information to have, and to also have prior to town meeting.
We can put something together like that.
Okay. All right. There was something else, but that's all I have for right now.
Mr. Dolinsky.
Yes, first off, I'd like to compliment our new business manager on the amount of detail she sent us as to the budget. I've gone over a number of the figures. I've had the opportunity to sit down with her, and I'm a little bit concerned as to some of these reports that we had. Some of the numbers, I'm looking at the general ledger by function, by department. Some of the numbers don't seem to marry as to what's in the budget, okay?
If I could just say something about the general ledger, and this is, I've said this before, I'll probably, and I'll say it again now. The general ledger is what we use to spend the money that's currently budgeted. There is no relationship, none, to the amount that has been spent to date in this budget. No relationship to the budgeted proposal, because some things are not spent till the end of the year, some things are spent very early in the year. So the amounts of things, so if you look at a line and you say, oh, there's 97% left in that line, well, in this particular case, the one I'm looking at is because that's summer work and summer hasn't come up yet. There are others that there is almost nothing or nothing left. So these numbers do not, in fact, marry to the budget proposal. And so that I certainly agree that that is the case.
I understand what you're saying, There are items in here, of course, that I know summer work or whatever the case may be, that there's 100% of the money has not been spent. But, and I say but, when you look at the different line items and the way this is set up on this first report, the general ledger by function by department, where there's numbers that are reflected as to the general ledger budget not matching what's listed in the budget itself.
Talking about the accounts, right?
Right,
The
so
accounts don't
now,
match. I had the same comment.
Zainshah. When I look at certain areas, as an example, just to throw a couple of them out, if you look at number 108, which is the fine arts,
George?
I'm looking at the general ledger by function by department.
Page 2.
What
Page 2,
Okay.
on this, account number 108, which is,
Do you have the school committee general ledger report that you got in this packet?
Yes.
right.
Okay, so
Oh, wait, no, yours says something, oh, this one is what you're looking at, or this
All
one?
right, so this, I'm looking at,
it's already been updated since our conversation, so the most current version is the one you got in your packet on Friday.
well, here again, if I can just refer you, and I understand what you're saying, okay, but the numbers don't marry. If I look at the general ledger by function by department, it says my general ledger budget was $801,000. I'm using account number 108.
Okay, what page is that?
I'm still on page 2.
Okay.
So it said 801, 186. Then I take a look at 108 in the budget itself
Last year's budget.
last year, where it says 778, 653. Well, that's not the same as 801, 186. And then I take a look at 108 over here, and the number is different also. So I'm a little concerned that we're not working on the same numbers all the way through the system. And I cannot understand why the discrepancies, okay?
Well,
sure what he's
you have to
asking.
realize that last year's budget was done in May and June, okay? So some of the numbers aren't going to reflect it, and I wasn't here at the time, so I don't know. Adjustments have been made, and there's, I mean, it should be able to be reflected, I mean, compared to, if you're looking at fiscal year 14 budget, it should still come out to, you might want to look at, after the adjustment, the third line, the general ledger budget.
Put this on your, sure, yeah.
So, if adjustments were made after the fact,
Yes. In fact, that's exactly what's happened.
that's what's happened, yeah,
But,
yeah.
I, somewhere along the line, and I don't know what better anybody else on the committee that went over this report, and I can understand adjustments being made. And it's logical, because if you're overspending on one department somewhere, we vote a bottom line. We don't vote a line item. I'm looking at line items.
Well,
okay?
salaries change, you know, when
Understandable.
when coming in September.
Understandable, 100%, okay? Somebody leaves, you have a substitute, whatever the case may be. But what I'm concerned about is that anybody looking at this and trying to compare one report to the other, in a lot of cases, the numbers don't marry. And I understand you followed somebody else that did things her way.
Yeah.
And I remember the discussions we had in the subcommittee meetings with the finance subcommittee, and one person in particular who was really going after some of these numbers. But I'm a little concerned that the numbers don't marry out. And I think other people may have looked at these things, and I'm a little concerned. I like the idea, first off, of the fact that you gave us the information. I like getting it early, and I think that's great. We never had it before. There are suggestions that I have that would make this thing maybe a little bit better, but that's
that's for another meeting,
discussion
yep.
for another time. But at the same time, like I said, I am concerned. There were some questions when we did meet that you were able to answer. Going into some of the other accounts, like account number 300, which was the at the high school where there was a line item that I had questions, and you gave me the breakdown.
Yep.
Okay? The same thing when you gave me in the high school again for the science department, where the number was there. My
Okay.
question was, what was it? And you gave me the answers, and that's better than anything I've had before. So I'm very pleased with that respect. But at the same time, I would like to see, and maybe you and I can sit down and go over this at one time, not tonight.
Absolutely.
But look at this thing and see where
Yep.
some of these things are going astray.
If you point out some of the numbers that you see and let me know, I'd be glad to look through the report.
I
and
won't
see-
do that tonight,
Yeah.
but I will send, no.
Can I ask a question along the same lines so that I think may clarify? Because in my mind, I'm
That's
sorry,
the finance subcommittee.
it is to interrupt, but when you're talking about the general ledger report that you provided us and the discrepancies, is there not also issues of either grant money or revolving account money that would
Yeah,
have
you
been
won't-
affected, that would have been represented in the budget versus?
No, you won't
Okay.
find grant money or revolving accounts in this general ledger.
Right.
Was
This
the
is
idea
all
having
just
the meeting?
appropriation funds.
Right.
Yeah. I gave you sheets separately on revolving accounts
Right.
and what we're getting in grants, funds, and what we've expended.
Okay.
Yeah. So that is separate.
Okay.
And some of those revolving accounts and some of those grants, we are funding salaries. Yeah.
And if there, I mean, certainly any of the things, and as she did with the questions you've already asked, if there are specific numbers you have questions about, then Maria and I need time to look at them and couldn't necessarily say what got moved in this particular place or that
Fine
particular place
arts,
without
yeah.
a little bit of time to
I won't
track
spring
them
it right
down.
on you exactly, but no, I'll give you leeway and I'll make a nice presentation on it.
George is an easy guy.
But I do suggest that, because of the timing of the subcommittees and the budget, that it didn't work out the way one would have really preferred it to work out. But that is no means, not a reason not to start the subcommittee process now, so that before town meeting, you have a chance to be assured, and before FinCom meets with us, you have a chance to be assured that you can reflect the numbers
Right.
appropriately. So I do
Absolutely.
encourage the two of you to start that process so that you can work out all your
Absolutely.
issues and
You
comments.
done, George?
Yes, I am.
Dr. Euro.
I also had the same similar problem to George. First of all, we had this finance subcommittee, and we wanted to meet. That was very much the reason why we had the finance subcommittee. And I know Mrs. Hortarides was great in her previous job, giving the school committee monthly updates on where we stand with regard to the budget. So one of the issues I had was the account names and account numbers didn't really match the fiscal 14 budget we had that was approved by the town meeting. Like the first item says undesignated system-wide budget 328 adjustment minus 9,000. So. I hope to, we tried to get a finance subcommittee meeting going, but we couldn't. And then I guess George met with Mrs. Hortarides. So I look forward to an opportunity to resolve this, to make it some kind of a standard report, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel every month. Make it easy for you, easy for us to figure out. So I think that's a really useful exercise, and I appreciate what George is saying. We vote on the bottom line, and the superintendent can move the money around in most accounts, and for certain accounts, we have to make a vote of the school committee to vote it. And we are all here to support a big budget for the students because they deserve the best that we could afford. So I will set that aside. I had some other questions. There was, we got some big picture questions and small picture questions. I was just looking at, Dr. Rizzi mentioned that the budget dated 12/13/2013 is pretty much the same as the one that was prepared on
I'm not sure that that's what I said.
November. Would you point out what's the difference?
It might have changed because the custodians,
No, since the original budget proposal was made, there have not been a lot of changes. We've been going through the process at the meetings here,
That's my point.
and there are not, so there's,
The library
it's all
aids
right
and-
there
yeah.
in black and white.
Yeah.
The only thing change I noticed is on the first page, fiscal year 14 final, net school spending went down from 37,820,944 in November 8th version to 37,806,771. So I was wondering why that is. You know what I'm
Just say
talking
that again.
about?
I don't know
The
what
beginning?
page you're looking at, and I don't know
what
what
I'm
you're
just looking at the cover pages.
Page 1.
Page 1.
Cover pages of two versions. So this is just a fiscal year 14 final, I guess, approved.
and what are you looking at? You're looking at the fiscal year 14 final?
Yeah, at the bottom of the.
Yes, there was a change there. There was $895 that was made in error from the last previous business manager, and we had to change it to reflect the correct budget that was voted back in, what is it, May gets voted? I wasn't there at the time, but that
So
was,
that sounds like a $14,000 difference?
14,170.
I don't think so, no. Are you looking at, don't look at the net school spending budget down here. Look at the grand total budget, which is $39,538,617. That's the figure you should be looking at.
So why did the net school spending change? Did the formula change?
What date, may I ask what date it is you're looking at for the November one?
I'm looking at the November versus December.
But November what, because I have November 22nd, it's the same. Do you have an earlier November?
November
18th?
8th.
Oh, 8th, I'll have to
Right.
go back to an earlier one then, okay.
Right here, Joyce.
I
Okay.
can look at that, but I don't have the
So is
old
that the
budget
November
here.
one?
Okay.
I have it at my office.
So it's just a
I'll
question.
let you know.
All right.
Definitely will.
Now, the second question I have is related to the new information you gave us. I really appreciate that. One was the revolving accounts.
Yep.
Would you walk me through for one of the accounts, let's say like the athletic revolving? You
Okay.
have a beginning balance fiscal
Yep.
14,
sure.
so we had about $65,000
The athletic
at
revolving.
July
we-
1st.
Yep, athletic revolving, we started off at July 1st with $65,140. Since July 1st through December 13th, we have received $72,012 in gates and fees. We've
gates.
expended so far $34,347. And this account pays for weight room, help in the weight room, and it also pays for athletic transportation. And we've encumbered $80,398, leaving an ending balance of $22,407. And we're only 6 months through this budget, so I'm sure we're going to be we're going to be getting more receipts coming in, and we're going to be expending more money on this account.
Okay. The question I had was the process of encumbering it. How do we, based on what we
We're
encumber?
probably encumbering the athletic transportation, I'm pretty sure.
We make a
Yeah.
reservation for the bus?
There are certain things that we have off-site where students need to practice or go to games and matches, including to pools for practicing swimming, which is a winter cost, and we know what the cost is going to be, but you need to have buses, and you need to have buses for hockey, for ice time. So those are costs that can be anticipated, and when they're anticipated, we encumber them.
Mr. Delansky.
If I could just
I'll
support,
yield to Mr. Dolinsky.
yeah, just to support what you were saying, there's also official costs that we know.
Referees, right. are part
Officials
of-
that are part of the picture, referees for basketball, wrestling, hockey, et cetera, et cetera. These are all things that will be incurred. The same thing with the baseball, et cetera, et cetera. You know approximately how many games you schedule for and what their rates are, and you can plot that in ahead of time without having the actual expense. So I mean, I understand the number. I mean, it's a little scary looking at $80,000, but knowing all the components.
No, I
at
appreciate that. So that reminds me, another question I had, that's a small picture question, is I noticed that the budget we propose for the officials for the athletic department went up by about 50%. Do you
That's
know who do we pay that money to?
The MIAA sets the rates, and there is no choice in the rates, and they have gone up considerably. And there are some folks who are thinking that those people are going to price themselves out of a job. But if you're going to participate in the Hockomock League, you pay the set rates.
So that's their MIAA people that we pay to?
We pay the officials, but we pay them the rates that the MIAA sets.
So we pay officials that we choose within the...
Well,
No, the officials are assigned by the MIAA for each event. As an example, if you have a basketball game, like tonight there was 3 games scheduled at home. You got a freshman game, you got a JV game, you got a varsity game. Each one has a couple of referees, okay? Each one gets approximately, let's say, $75 to $80 per person per game. That's already decided by the MIAA. Being involved in the organization I am involved with, we also have to face increased
You pay the same fee?
official, not the same. They reduce somewhat, but I'm paying a lot of money for officials to referee a Pop Warner game, and the same number of people doing that game as they do a high school varsity game.
so we don't get to set the rates, and we don't get to decide that we're going to pay X amount. The MIAA tells us what we're going to pay.
Okay.
The other thing really actually boils down to is the off-site rentals. And that's governed by the facility that you're renting.
You're somewhat held hostage by
Oh,
the
absolutely.
pool or the ice rink.
Correct. I happen to agree.
Okay. The next question I have is, you mentioned that you already met with the town manager, and that's really great news. I'm so happy to hear that about having a unified, front material. I think that's really great. But the question that I have is, we haven't seen the town revenue figures yet. Last meeting you mentioned you got a hot off the press.
I just
at
received
the
them
last
last
meeting.
week, so
Yeah.
you just got to give me a little
So
time to...
what I was wondering is, do you have a sense on how they would feel about this 4% increase? Would they
actually-
be fighting us, or would they be saying, well, that's reasonable?
That's there's a very different environment than there has been, and I feel like I will help to preserve that environment by not speaking and putting words in the town manager's mouth about his budget. And at this point in time, they're several weeks behind us in the process, and he's not finished putting all the numbers together.
Well, the other way I could ask this is, are the revenues that the town is getting from the state and the, whatever the tax collection revenues, are they adding up to about 4%
That-
increase?
We haven't had the meeting yet to look at the town revenue picture because the numbers just came out. So that's actually going to be a better conversation for another meeting, and probably quite early in January.
Right, but you mentioned the numbers came out at 7 days ago, and I asked for those numbers. You have not provided them to me. Am I correct?
The town revenue numbers come from the town, and Maria and I have not had a chance to work with them or with the folks on the town side specifically around the revenue numbers.
So the
I
town
don't
side-
feel comfortable making any pronouncements right now.
So the town
About the
side sent
revenue.
them to you saying that we cannot give this to the school committee members?
No, not actually, no.
So that, I would have appreciated if you included that in the
Well, that's
package.
available from Mr. Rowe if you wish to ask him.
Well, but why should I ask Mr.
Okay.
Rowe when
We'll get into
he sends you the information for the purpose of giving it to the school committee? Okay, the next question is, again, I appreciate that this is the bottom line figure, budget for the school committee to approve. And as we discussed, the numbers did not change much since they were proposed in the beginning of November, actually the first version. But since then, there has been a number of input for wishes of people to include in the budget several areas such as special education concerns, West School issues in terms of student achievement, middle school science program, repairs to the Stoughton High School and South School, and elimination or reduction of the fees people pay. The issues that have been identified in the NEASC report for the education in the high school, and the issues identified in the district report for our public school system as a whole. And another issue I would just noticed on the patch today is the SAT scores. The SATs, according to Department of Education website, our SAT scores, average SAT scores are maybe 25 to 30 points below the state average. And superintendent made a statement saying that SAT scores could be increased by 100 points if you got some outside private classes. So what I would like to see this budget is to include all these considerations. So I'm going to vote yes if you say you have addressed all those concerns.
Well, I'm certainly going to say that many of the things that you mentioned, and we've talked about this already before, the positions that are being proposed in the budget that are new, many of them are a larger percentage than the 17% or 16% of students that are in special ed. There's a large percentage of programs and positions that are proposed in this budget to address issues around special ed. As I've said before, the West School has things in place, additional staff members and all kinds of programs that are ongoing that have been put in place to increase the improvements that have already been made there. And there were about $2 million worth of proposals of programs and staff that our administrators made, and in this coming down to what seemed like it would be a reasonable budget proposal, about 2/3 of what they asked for ended up on the cutting room floor, all based as much as possible on the analysis of our plans and data. So all of the things that you mentioned have in some way or other been addressed, and there are things in our plans going forward for 2 years and 3 years that frankly we just can't put everything in every year. We can't put in everything that we think we need or would like to have. So using all the processes that we have to analyze what things should come in what priority order, all of those things are addressed.
Okay, well, thank you. But the thing that doesn't give me the warm and fuzzy feeling is that the budget, original budget proposal came in November 8th, 2013. And since then, people have been talking. We've been encouraging people to talk, make recommendations, suggestions. And then now it's the final proposal version, which is December 13, and we are saying the final numbers did not change. So how did we include any or most or part of those recommendations? Where is the money?
A lot of those things were already in the budget. You just didn't notice where they were, but they were in there already. And most of the things that Ms. Campbell, who did a really thoughtful and articulate letter on her suggestions in terms of things that are important budget priorities, had literally already been addressed well before she wrote the letter. Not 100% of them, but not 100% of all the concerns of any aspects of the school system have been able to be addressed in a single budget.
Can I ask you how many positions? Because I know the number of positions that you created wasn't changed between November and now, but there were a large number of positions that were a part of that original budget back in November. And like the superintendent said, a lot of them.
Were the things that Ms. Campbell actually brought up.
Right.
But I hope I have that sheet.
I have the sheet, I just am not seeing the count on it.
If you give me the sheet, I'll tell you which one.
It follows, it's the last page of the budget.
The last page of the budget, yeah. I saw a lot of spread positions.
Yes.
And, you know, we also, there are many, many pressing needs. So it is not, in fact, the case that all of these things are for special ed, but a great deal of them are.
Well, and if they're not directly, they also seem to supplement the classroom such
Well-
that it frees up.
Reading teachers, 2 of them are to increase the time our special ed teachers can spend on direct special ed services. Some people would argue a guidance counselor is, but that's actually for the general population. The transitional kindergarten is for students who are struggling, although not necessarily all of them on IEPs. The alternative education teacher in the high school is a special ed position. The remediation program is for students who are struggling in all sorts of ways. The teaching assistant at the West School is a special ed position. The early childhood coordinator is a special ed position. And the 2 special education teachers in the middle and high school are special education positions.
Can I also add, because I noticed on here the additional 7 late-run buses, because you had talked about fees as well, is one of the priorities that was expressed here was to be able to provide the extended day after-school services for a lot of remediation. We didn't feel that that was possible to do without providing transportation, and that is a decent-sized transportation cost, but was certainly a reflection of our value to
Yes.
be able to.
If we have extended day and remediation and enrichment services and students can't access them because they can't get home, then that's a barrier that's going to prevent a lot of the children who actually need those things from using them. So although that's a fairly big number, we felt that it is crucial to the success of the programs because not everybody's parents can come and collect them.
So that bus can be used only for students that are paying for the bus or getting
No,
free bus,
late.
or anybody?
Late bus?
The late buses are for anyone who stays for after-school programs.
Oh, really? I could use it.
Maybe you'll ride home.
I have a question. on
Ms. Ovene.
So I'd like to go back to revenue and expenditure summary, Schedule 1. It's on page 17 of 20. And this is expenditures by city or town, and specifically payments to other districts.
Oh, you're looking at the annual report, the end of the year report.
Yes, I'm sorry, yes.
Okay.
Okay, so included in your packet
Big one?
Which
was
one?
the
Oh, okay.
the end of the year report,
That's
which
for
is
last year.
every business manager's nightmare.
Yes. I remember from
and
the
every
last year.
district-
This is the DESI report, God bless it.
Everybody does this in the same exact format, so every district has one, and now you have your very own. So, what page did you say?
This is page 17 of 20.
Okay.
And this is line item 517 and 516 and 517, school choice tuition and tuition to Commonwealth charter schools. So could you explain it's not a large number, about $20,000, but can you explain the school choice tuition since we don't have.
We don't have school choice, but we do have students in Stoughton who can choose to go to districts that do have school choice.
Okay.
So we have some students in Avon, and I don't know if there are any other districts we
I
have.
think we
that-
have one in Bridgewater, we have another one. I had the list. There aren't that many, but there are.
Okay.
Actually, I don't put that number in, the 20,950. That's already populated in this report. When I download it from the DESE security portal, that comes from DESE.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then the tuition to Commonwealth charter schools, that reflects our students that
Go to
go
charter
to
school schools. Yep,
Okay.
I also don't populate that. That comes
Okay.
automatically from the DESE. Yep.
Okay. I think those are my only questions on the DESE report.
You could spend a lot of time with this report.
I know. It was actually really
wanted to
really
heard
interesting.
about, if you look at the first and the second page of this report,
The
The DESE report?
the end of the year report, on these 2 pages, you'll be able to see the revenue that we took in as the school district. This is for fiscal year 13. If you notice, revenue by
Athletic
state.
receipts is 137, so that's the gate.
Yep.
Gate,
Yep.
and then
And then
what
you've
would
got
be the
the
fees?
school lunch receipts. You've got, I could give you a complete breakdown of all of this
Yeah.
if you wanted me to.
We'll talk when we have our meeting
Yeah.
with you and George.
Yep.
Excellent.
Well, the final question is, do you think what we are asking for is enough to meet the goals of our educational goals of our system?
Nope,
And why are you not asking for more?
because we live in a real world, and in a real world with taxpayers that are very concerned about what their residential tax cost is, and the number of the increase in state revenue in the last few years has been very, very small. So we have to balance what we need against what the town can afford, and a 10% increase in the education budget would just not be reasonable to ask for, so I can't in good conscience recommend it.
So we are saying that our educational goals are too ambitious for our means. Is that what you're saying?
I think it's pretty clear what I just said.
So do we need to revise our educational goals?
Well, I mean, it isn't my personal interjection here, but I think that much like the town is facing a similar situations in terms of where they feel they need to go to replace services that have been cut or services that are necessary, it's about phasing in those services over a time period that's reasonable so that we're all able, because we do work together. I mean, I want to state that too, that it's not school versus town, and that our health is connected to their health and vice versa.
Right. But our legal charge is to make sure that we have proposed a budget that meets our educational goals.
I would be concerned to an extent that not to be so ambitious that one couldn't implement everything that they put the money for in 1 year. I think that there are makes sense at a certain point to phase in what you're planning to do and test it, because everything is so data driven.
And we are asking, we're asking for an increase, and that's, we're asking for, I mean, any increase is a significant increase, and there's a parameter within which we live. There are towns that are willing to spend 40%, 50%, huge amounts of percent over their net school spending requirement. And in some cases, you see them as they're very high-performing districts. But I wouldn't expect to be very well received at town meeting if we went and asked for 10 or 15 or 20%, or I think that we have to look at what the potential is, and the town has always been extremely generous within the bounds of what they can afford. And they get a good school system for that, and the plans for moving forward and improving are, I hope the town meeting will see reasonable and affordable for them.
But with that said, I mean, this certainly is your opportunity if you have an area to identify. I mean, one of my goals when I look at a budget is I know that yourself and George are numbers people. Not that I'm not a numbers person, but that you like to look at the detail of the numbers. My goal in looking at the budget is to look at, you know, the 3-year data, the data plan, the action plans, and to make sure that the goals reflected in where we need to go are reflected in this budget in terms of enrichment, after school, remediation, additional reading teachers, the types of things that were identified in those plans. So I feel satisfied in my discussions with the superintendent that those goals are reflected in this plan in a way that is being phased in and implemented. But like I said, with that said, if there are areas that you feel specifically need to be addressed, this is the meeting.
Right. So I have.
Yeah.
I mean, I have identified 5 priorities, which I think are important, and I also mentioned the recommendations of the NEASC report and the recommendations of the district review, and the superintendent proffered that you know, she's taking those into consideration, and that they are
And
in
that
the
some of
budget.
them are reflected,
Right,
yes.
Right. So I'm sorry, George. Go
Oh,
ahead.
again, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to
You can
interrupt.
finish.
We are such gentlemen down on this side of the table. I love you, George.
Yeah, right. Now I'm nervous. Now I am nervous. Right.
Mr. Dolinsky.
No, the question I have is more procedural than anything else. Right now, we're faced with the fact that this is our last meeting before the budget recommendation has to be submitted.
Correct.
Now, tonight, if we vote in the affirmative, then we are approving the total budget of the 39,269, 393 going to be submitted to town meeting. Am I not correct?
That is the.
That's the net school
That's the net
spending, that's
school
not the
spending.
Well,
budget.
that's,
The 41,
all
128.
right, the
number.
41, I'm sorry.
It's the grand total budget.
Right, the
Yes.
41,
128, 051.
051.
So why don't we have the superintendent make her recommendation for
And-
the
and-
right amount?
And can I just add, because at this point, what we are doing is voting to bring forward a budget to the selectmen for inclusion, but that this is in fact not necessarily the final budget that will be at town meeting, because we still have a
But
process.
this is
our budget to bring
Correct.
forward but
for them to
to include.
Right.
This is our final before we make another final.
Before we make
Right.
the final. So then that's really more for the public's clarification, because this is in fact not necessarily the budget that will be on the floor at town meeting, particularly in light of public hearings and FinCom to come. So,
And even if it is,
had a-
there may not be the funds to vote it. But
And-
this is the school committee proposal.
and before we have Dr. Rizzi make a recommendation, Ms. Sovine has a question or
No,
concern.
I was just going to say that having been through this budget, the district improvement plan, the action plan, the strategic plan, and the school improvement plans, what I see are the recommendations of all the work we've done in the last year to identify our priorities in this budget. And that's what I think the really important thing about it is. So that's all I had to
Well,
say.
I had one more question I forgot.
Yes, sir.
For the negotiation with the unions that have been unsettled, which shall remain nameless, we have to have some sort of money allocated to be able to, bargain in good faith. Do we have that in here, or where would I find that?
It is.
Yes, and we only have one union that hasn't settled. All of our unions are settled.
I know, but to show
It is in fact reflected.
where.
That's up to you if you want to get into that conversation.
I'm not sure that I could, you know what, I'd prefer not
Oh,
to
it's
because of
inside the
part-
salaries, so it's sort of
like that, yeah.
instruction line? Okay, I accept that.
Any other comments?
No, please make your recommendation.
Thank you.
Based on the process of many months and much discussion and all of the process that we've entered into to come up with a budget proposal, it's my recommendation that you vote this budget proposal of $41,128,051 to be the school committee's proposal to send to the Board of Selectmen on or before the date of 12/31/2013.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation on the school budget.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous.
Motion to adjourn. Oh,
I-
go
well,
into
I actually-
executive session.
No, you know what, I would prefer, because the executive session for tonight is listed as collective bargaining strategy, and although we have met once, we do not have another collective bargaining meeting set until January 27th, and we have one meeting before then. January 14th is our next regular meeting, and I do not find, in light of the weather, that it makes sense for us to necessarily have any updates if you run the
Well,
committee.
motion for adjourn.
So I'm looking, unless you believe that we should have any updates on
don't
collective
I
bargaining.
think it's necessary this evening.
I would-
What about the financial warrants?
Oh, yes, financial warrants.
We can come
can
back
sign them on
tomorrow
the way.
and sign it
Yeah,
tomorrow.
or we
don't
can
need
sign
to
them on
be
the way out,
signed
but
at
they
any
are
meeting.
available.
They can be
They are
signed.
available, thank you. Next regular meeting is January 14th, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn if that is.
So moved, Madam Chairman.
I already made the motion.
Second.
All
Sorry
in,
about that.
sorry, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned, please drive
snow.
safely.
So we should.